Hi guys, Hooving Central here, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be looking at the probably the most unusual story from the classic run. I suppose, bar Mission Impossible, Mission to the Unknown. The Deadly Assassin. Deadly Assassin is a confusing story considering it's the first time the Doctor goes on to Gallifrey. So as it was when it was released, it was probably quite a confusing story that he's gone to Gallifrey, which he doesn't normally do. He does a lot later because he goes back a couple of times, like in Arc of Infinity and the Invasion of Time. But this was the first time the Doctor had ever actually gone to Gallifrey in the show's history. It is also, up until Series 9 of the new series, this was the only story where the Doctor appears in it and he didn't have any companion or any one-time companion. He didn't have a single companion. Although some people could argue Castan technically was like a kind of companion. No, I think the Fourth Doctor was by himself in the story. And as I said in Series 9, it doesn't happen again until even in The Woman Who Lived, he kind of got me as kind of a companion. So I would say probably about Heaven Sent is the first kind of story since then. And then, so Heaven Sent was probably the first kind of story where he didn't have a companion, and this was the original. I don't know why, but I think Series 14 as a whole is probably one of my top seasons. I think this is probably the weakest link in terms of master stories. The Master as a whole. As the Master as a whole, he's probably the Peter Pratt's Master is probably the weakest link. I think he's probably the worst Master of the classic run. He's definitely the worst Master of the classic run. But as a story, I think the Deadly Assassin's definitely one of the best stories in the Tom Baker run. As it was in my top 10, definitely. So I just thought I'd go more into depth. So basically, the story premise is at the end of the Hand of Fear, the Doctor gets something from Gallifrey, and he tells Sarah that as a Time Lord, he's obligated to go to wherever he needs to go and stop what's going to happen. So he leaves Sarah at the end of Hand of Fear, and at the start of this, you get a little bit of like an open credits telling you something, and then the Doctor sees the Panopticon, and he sees the President get shot by a gun, which then he thinks is him, and then he kind of snaps back into the TARDIS, which, by the way, the Series 14 TARDIS set console, this looks really cool. Not the console, maybe itself is probably the weakest bit, but like stained glass windows look really nice. But anyway, he arrives there, they find out that they find the TARDIS, and they go, oh, it's a Type 40, that's odd, they're supposed to be all gone and whatever, and then and then the story kind of progresses a little bit, and then the Doctor does what he was meant to, he gets into the position where he saw himself in with the sniper in hand and about to shoot for some reason, but turns out he didn't shoot the President, he was locked always to miss, he never was able to shoot, but another guy shot him from a different angle. The Doctor figures out the Master is there because there was a compressed Time Lord in one of the cameras, and the Doctor knows that's one of the tricks the Master picked up, as he does it in a couple of stories like Terror of the Autons, and he does it again in stuff like in the new series. He did it recently in the Ascension of Simon and Timeless Children, and he also did it in Legopolis as well and stuff like that. I think Tom Baker plays this story quite well. It's definitely my favourite story where he's been on Gallifrey, mainly because in Invasion of Time, that's because in Invasion of Time, you've got the Doctor walking around, and then you've got Leela trying to figure out what's going on. But in this, it's a lot easier because the Doctor knows where he needs to go, because he knows Gallifrey, which makes it a lot easier to understand why he's going there and where he's going and stuff like that. Which is a bit harder when you've got a companion trying to muddle away around. In terms of Tom Baker and the Master's performance, Tom Baker does a great performance in this story. He's on fine form. he definitely took a bit of a blow without Elizabeth Sladen being there. And I definitely feel like Tom Baker needed a companion. But I think if anyone was going to play a Doctor without a companion for a couple of stuff, it would definitely be Tom Baker, and then Peter Capaldi probably could also be the one. I think if there was like a season where they were companionless, Peter Capaldi would be my number one pick to play it off, but Tom Baker would definitely come in close second for the Doctor without a companion, who would probably be able to do it without a companion. In terms of the Master, honestly, I don't think there's been a particularly awful Master. I think Peter Pratt definitely gets the slack for the worst kind of Master, mainly because he's in The Deadly Assassin, which is a good story, and I think a lot of people acknowledge it is a good story. But I think his mask, as I said in his top 10 best, the mask really holds his performance back because he can't really see. And then the whole, just the whole face, just you can't get any facial expressions off him, and he doesn't really do very much. He just kind of sits there and speaks like, "Oh, you're gonna die, Doctor," and stuff like that. And I think the only reason he would be below, in my opinion, from Geoffrey Beevers is Geoffrey Beaver, who played him in Keeper of Traken. You can see his face, like it's all crinkly still, but you can see his eyes and his mouth, and you can get a bit more facial expressions from him. And also, he does a lot more Big Finish stuff, which also probably gives him a lot for other people. Personally, not me, but it does help him a little bit. Where the Peter Pratt's just kind of stuck. I like the concept, like he steals the Slasher Rassilon and all that. But ultimately, it feels kind of filler. It feels like if they took the Deadly Assassin out, it would be a big loss in the terms of development with the Doctor not having a companion for the first time. But it feels like they really could have gone. They could have really just gone. Face of the Hand of Fear, the Face of Evil. Without the Deadly Assassin, and all it would have done would have been taken 4 extra episodes, possibly for Leela to have more stories. I do like Leela, so if this story was comically bad, like if it was like the Twin Dilemma bad, then I would complain that this story took away another serial that we could have had with Leela in. Similar to how I complained that Twin Dilemma could have really have been another story with the Fifth Doctor and Perry, which would have been a lot better. But I enjoy it. I think the worst part about this isn't anything to do with the episode, but the Doctor goes into the Matrix for like the second and third part, I think it is. I think he comes out in the third part or the fourth part. But anyway, the Doctor goes into the Matrix, and that's fine. Like at the time, I'm sure that was fine. But now, with the whole Timeless Children thing, you would have thought that the Doctor might have seen that when he went into the Matrix. You'd assume that the Master would have seen it again with the trial of the Time Lord. You'd assume that the Doctor, when they went into the Matrix, and the Master, when they went into the Matrix, would have found this out way before the Master found it out in the Timeless Children, which annoys me because I feel like somewhat that kind of could distract from the story. But you're like, well, he didn't find it. Why has he not found it here? Which, could be annoying. Another thing I find funny is they've used these sash. I don't know if you can see it probably here, but around the back is a sash, like a little sash. I think it's like not the sash, but like it's like a little Rassilon emblem or whatever. And they did reuse this from the story Revenge of the Cybermen. So at the back of the people from the Revenge of the Cybermen, I can't remember what the name is because the Vogans. They have the Sasha Rash. They have the emblem of Rassilon behind them because it was for that story. But then they reused them here, and they stuck as more of a stable here because Vogu never came back as a place, whether this did, which is always quite funny to me. Another thing which I never really got about that Gallifrey stories is in this the Castellan's quite helping the Doctor, forthgoing. He wants to know who the Master is and try and figure out what's going on. But then, obviously, he probably was just a one-time guy, one story, and then he's gone to do something else, like a lot of actors in Doctor Who aren't recurring. But then, because they're Time Lords and they can regenerate, the Castellan changes pretty much each episode. Same with Barusa. But I find that like in the Invasion of Time, for instance, Barusa is a good person, but then the minute in Five Doctors he becomes evil, I'm like, well, I never saw that from the Barusa in the Invasion of Time, and that's what I don't like about this story, which is in the Deadly Assassin. I like Castellan. Castellan seems like a really cool kind of person. He just gets his job done and all that. Then in the Invasion of Time, he's scared of the Sontarans, even though he's battled with the Master, arguably a lot bigger of a threat. And then again, he just gets framed in the Five Doctors and murdered, and it's just annoying because it would be cooler if we saw his character just do the same thing, rather than it just feels like they've gone, oh yeah, well, Castellan was in it last time, let's just give you the name Castellan, but you're a different character completely. You're a different actor, you're a different character. It's not like the Doctor, who regenerates and has different traits. He is completely different. He's just got the same name, which is a bit of an annoyance. Nothing to do with the Deadly Assassin, but it's just annoyance with Gallifrey stories in general. But yeah, overall, this is definitely one of those stories where it's like, for me at least, I really do enjoy the story. Like, there's no doubt about it. This is a good story, but I'm not sure it would have been as. It's not going to be as missed if they'd gone, oh yeah, if time turned back, if someone turned back time and the Deadly Assassin was never made and they made the Face of Evil straight in and stuff like that, I don't think it would have been the biggest loss ever. It wouldn't have been like, oh, Caves of Androzani loss, or the or something like the War Games loss, or Earthshock, something like that. It would be more or Genesis of the Daleks. It would just kind of be like a oh no anyway kind of thing. You just kind of go, oh well, that was all like that story, but just go on with it. But I think the best part about this is the fact that they did bring the Master back, which I'm assuming, which I don't, obviously nowadays it would have been sound stupid that the Master was probably not going to be brought back. But I assume when after Frontier in Space, and when they found out that Dutch Delgado had been, unfortunately, passed away in a car accident, that they were kind of sceptical to bring the Master back, because his final story, the final game, which was Pertwee's final story, was supposed to be him and the Master was supposed to die. So it was a risky play by Robert Holmes to bring the Master back, and it was also a risky play by Philip Hinchcliffe to bring the Master back. But it works, and it does work, and I think the Master only can get better gets better from this point on. He's good in this, and he's good in Creeper Patrolkin, but then when Anthony Laney comes in, he finally becomes quite the Master again. He becomes the really good Master again. But yeah, that was just my opinion on this story. It's I think this is one of those stories where it's like you say it, like if you're talking to someone about Tom Baker stories, you're 9 times out of 10 not really hear this story, but not really go too much into depth in it. It's like depth in it. It's like you're not going to say Deadly Assassin and be like, oh yeah, it's pretty good, and then just move on. Rather than it's something else being like, oh yeah, it's not like Deadly Assassin. Oh my god, that's the best story ever. It's just like kind of Deadly Assassin. Yeah, it's pretty good. So yeah, it's just one of those ones. It is quite good though, because sometimes it does get a bit repetitive with companions going, oh Doctor, what's this? Doctor, what's this? Doctor, what's this? And that does get a bit annoying. So it is good that you got a bit of relax from that, because I think Sarah Jane doesn't do it as much by her final time, like in Mask of the Drag Race, she doesn't do it as much. But then Leela does that a little bit more, which is a bit annoying. But I mean, all companions have their flaws, I suppose. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and consider watching one of my other things, where I recently started a series doing the Is It Worth It, which is looking at stuff like box sets and books and figures, and looking at, are the prices they've been given actually worth it, and comparing them to stuff like, I compared the DVDs to the Blu-ray box sets, and I compared, is it the Lost in Time box set still worth it now to when it was when it first was released, and stuff like that, which is cool. And if you want to if you want to watch more reviews like this, you can. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed, and yeah, see you.